Between the years of 1992 and 2003, three distinct men operating across three different continents systematically killed more than 180 people. High-profile killers are often framed as brilliant tacticians, calculating every move to outsmart elite investigators. In reality, the most successful ones rely on something far more mundane: structural chaos. This map follows three disparate nations through a specific window of time. These killers evaded capture for years because they operated during periods of total social transition, moving through the gaps left by underfunded police and disconnected jurisdictions. To see how these sprees reached such a scale, we have to look past the individuals and examine the internal instability of the nations they terrorized. In the mid-1990s, South Africa was a new democracy, dismantling decades of apartheid. The entire social order was being rebuilt, and power was shifting in ways the country had never seen before. This transition changed the economy, drawing a new demographic of Black women into the workforce. Thousands of women began traveling further from home, often alone, to find any available employment. Moses Sithole focused on this specific economic need. He lured 38 women to their deaths by posing as a professional offering job interviews that never materialized. The murders went unconnected for months because the police force was struggling with its own internal restructuring. The units on the street lacked the forensic training and specialized facilities required to link the crime scenes. Sithole found success by targeting the institutional growing pains of a fledgling government and the desperation of those looking for a way into a new economy. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the city of Angarsk, Siberia, was defined by extreme local violence and the decay of central authority. With a few thousand residents seeing 2 murders every day, gang turf wars became the police's only priority. In this environment, the disappearances of individual women were filed away as collateral damage or blamed on the victims. Mikhail Popkov used this institutional rot as a shield. Because he was an active-duty police officer, he used his patrol uniform and his badge to gain the trust of women looking for a safe ride home. When survivors came forward and described an attacker in a uniform, his colleagues refused to investigate. They ignored the testimony because questioning one of their own challenged the systemic belief that the police were above suspicion. Popkov's crimes were sustained by a system that prioritized protecting its own image over investigating violence against marginalized people. In the early 2000s, China was experiencing a boom that rapidly modernized its urban centers, creating a stark contrast with its isolated rural provinces. Far from the new skylines, a drifter named Xinhai targeted isolated farming families living in remote villages that lacked basic infrastructure. He moved by bicycle across provincial borders, entering homes at night to wipe out entire households before retreating back into the darkness. Systemic blind spots kept him invisible. Rural jurisdictions lacked centralized databases, and press censorship meant the public was never warned a killer was moving between provinces. Because information was restricted, police treated each event as a local dispute, failing to see the emerging pattern. Yang's body count was the result of a disconnect between a booming urban economy and rural jurisdictions that remained dark and disconnected. All 3 men were eventually stopped, but it required law enforcement to move past the systemic failures that had protected them. In South Africa, the investigation finally succeeded after the police brought in external profilers and allowed the media to inform the public about Sithole's methods. Piercing the silence in Russia required decades of waiting for DNA testing to become accessible. Once investigators had unbiased biological proof, they could finally bypass internal corruption and charge a fellow officer. And Yang's arrest in China was made possible only after the government formed a task force to share data across provinces, allowing a routine stop to finally link back to his crimes. These killers found the structural gaps in their societies during periods of rapid change. They were not masterminds, but opportunists. As history moves forward, the most effective defense against violence is building functional, transparent institutions that protect a society's most vulnerable people.